fresh air and the feeling of rain on her face. And she came in this place, getting shamed and disgraced. The plaintiff's estate makes sure she caught the blame in the case. Another number without a name or a face. 2 million filling their prisons, now they claimed it was safe. Prison bars start looking like barcodes. Freedom was sold, case closed. Lying arm in a dark road, banging the gavel to send you traveling carloads. On gravel on stark roads like cargo to a place where the heart grows cold. You hear another prison door slam shut by hard-nosed politicians making commission off of starved souls in prison. Monopolize the cash flow, go directly to jail and do not pass go.
There's more than 2.5 million people in prison, and it increases every single year. Not because more crime is being committed, but because they're building more prison beds. At this point, prisons are being built just for the purpose of putting people inside of them.
Well, to me, the prison abolition movement is really an anti-violence movement and an anti-oppression movement. And the goal is to really find a way where we can have a safe, compassionate world without prisons.
In its broadest sense, it's a political vision. So it's the vision of a society where we're not reliant on policing and surveillance and imprisonment as the primary or only forms of dealing with crime or social, political, and economic problems.
Well, first, I think it's really important, even though it's longer and it sounds academic, to say prison industrial complex abolition, because prison abolition just sort of implies decarceration, and incarceration is only one aspect of the prison industrial complex. It's a network of relationships, of institutions that use all the isms that oppress us: sexism, racism, you know, homophobia, classism, ageism, all these different systems of oppression and violence that are reinforced through different institutions: healthcare, education, prisons, the military, to promote and provoke and encourage this relationship of crime and punishment.
Part of the work that we have to do is to provide opportunity and space for folks to talk about the prison industrial complex and what it really is, what it really does, what it really doesn't, what it really doesn't as in making us safe, or you know, how it promotes that it solves all these problems when actually it promotes most of the problems that it says it solves.
I think people have a misconception that the work that prisons do is keeping us safe. And one thing I love to point out to people that really shows how people don't feel safe, I think, and how actually prisons help further a culture of fear rather than safety, is that the only area of the construction industry that's grown as much as prison construction over the last 20 years is the construction of gated communities. So I know I don't have to go up to a poor person of color and say, do you feel safe? I know they're going to tell me they don't feel particularly safe because of prisons and policing. But what's really interesting to me is the people who are the most elite, the people with the most resources, they're not feeling safe either.
People say, well, what do you do about rape? What do you do about murder? Do you actually think that those actions are being confronted by just locking that person away? Not at all. You know, they use it as a deterrent. What would actually work is if we brought it back to community, if we invested in community.
Community-based programs that actually speak to what the core of the problem is, that doesn't completely take somebody out of their community and away from their families, and that are fully funded and actually sustainable.
Clearly, the work that we're doing with prisons isn't about safety. I would argue instead that what we're doing is promoting and perpetuating an underclass, a class of people who will never have access to any kind of opportunity to have decent education, vocational skills, the chance or the opportunity to get out of being a forced free laborer within the prison system, or living marginally in that capacity for the little time that they're outside of the prison system.
I think the biggest problem with privatized prisons is that they're run for profit. So the prisoners are basically being leased out, their labor is being leased out to private companies who are making huge profits. And it's sort of, you know, a modern day slavery system.
When we're taught that the Emancipation Proclamation of the Constitution did away with slavery, you know, we rarely spend time when we're kids learning about how there's an exception in our Constitution that says that slavery is all right if you're convicted of a crime. And interestingly, the company that has the contract to sew American and also Californian and other state flags runs a sweatshop out of the world's largest women's prison, which is located in Chowchilla, California. It's a Central California women's facility. And women there make 10 to 13 cents an hour sewing symbols of our democracy.
You know, our movement isn't about going tomorrow and opening all the prison doors and letting everybody free. It's about freeing up funds that are hurdled into the prison system and making sure that that our community has ways to deal with the problems that our communities deal with.
The more money we're putting into oppression through war, through prisons, through exporting our prison model all across the globe, the less money and resources we have for communities. So, you know, I look at my children every day and I say, well, if I fail in this, it means that they won't have public education. I mean, there are very serious conversations going on right now about privatizing the UC system, for example, in the state, because the state doesn't have money to run the UC system anymore, and yet we're about to launch the largest prison construction endeavor ever seen since the Holocaust in California. And so where, you know, if you pay for prisons, the money comes from something and it's directly being sucked out of public education, along with housing and shelter and, you know, and food.
Human beings, one of the most amazing thing about human beings, I think, is their imagination. And the fact that we're not using it and we're just going along with this form of punishment that has been presented to us and not changing it, not challenging it. Maybe we question it a little bit, but we're like, yeah, but whatever. You know, like the fact that we refuse to use our imagination. There's critical resistance, there's Justice Now, there's Center for Young Women's Development, there's All of Us or None, there's, you know, Coalition for Accountable Healthcare, there's TGI Justice Project, there's Friends Outside, which is here, there's the Inside Out Writing Project through the UCSC Women's Center, there's Gemma. You can go to a center and volunteer and work with people in a youth department like the Walnut Avenue Women's Center, or you can be a domestic violence advocate. All of those things, that sort of support for people, are the alternatives to the prison industrial complex.